What is on tap at Couz's Corner today? We are talking Big 12 Conference, the strength of the Big 12 Conference, and is it really as strong and as stable as many of us Big 12 fans have made it out to be in the previous weeks? Pull up a chair, sit back, relax, and let's talk about it. What is up, college sports fans, fellow members of Mountaineer Nation? This is Couz, and welcome into another edition of Couz's Corner. So pull up that chair and let me serve you up this shot of top shelf college football content. Yes, we're talking Big 12 Conference again. As I read articles, I listen to podcasts, and I gather more data, I'm starting to reassess my opinion on the strength of the Big 12 moving forward and if we are really in as good a shape as we think. There's been a lot of back and forth between the Pac 12 fans, the Big 12 fans, even some Pac 12 media have gotten involved about whether or not the Pac 12 is going to be below the Big 12 now, as far as Power 5 conferences go. And TV ratings is one of the things that people have been using in that argument. Now, Stuart Mandel did an article a few days ago that I did a video about. And Stewart talked about in that article how the new Pac 12 would still outpace the Big 12 in TV viewership. Now, I argued that he didn't. I argued that he used skew numbers in that article, and gave some data to support that fact. And I'm going to put that spreadsheet back on the screen again for the sake of this video. Now, if you look at the Z score, which is what my good friend Tony Altimore used to analyze this data here, and what that takes into account is what network the game was on, what time of day it was on, who they played, all that. And this information originally originated from YouTube channel D1360, who did a really nice deep dive about TV ratings between the ACC, the Big 12, and the Pac 12. But for the sake of my videos, I took out the information about the ACC just so we could focus on the Big 12 and the Pac 12. But as you can see here, the yellow being the Big 12, the blue being the Pac 12, the Big 12 doesn't really outperform the Pac 12. Now, they don't really outperform us either when you look top to bottom in the conference, but we don't outperform them either. So I feel like the Big 12 and the Pac 12 are pretty even when it comes to TV viewership numbers. I mean, obviously, Oregon and Washington are way ahead of everybody else. But once you get past those two schools, it's pretty even the rest of the way down. It kind of goes back and forth, between the two as far as ratings goes. For example, you've got Washington State at 3, Oklahoma State 4, Utah at 5, Kansas State 6, Oregon State 7, West Virginia 8, Stanford 9, Baylor 10, Arizona State 11. See what I mean? So it's pretty even once you get past Oregon and Washington. So I think the two conferences are on a pretty level plane when it comes to TV viewership. When you take out the schools that are leaving the conferences, that is. So that got me thinking. If ESPN only offered the Pac-12 $24.5 million, which is the number that's been reported, I don't know how accurate that is, but it's been reported that they come in with an offer of $24.5 million per team for their new TV deal. That's extremely low. I got to thinking, were the previous reports by Navigate, or the previous estimates, I should say, by Navigate, saying the new Big 12 would get between 40 and 50 million? Is that really accurate? How could the new Big 12 get 40 to 50 million and the new Pac 12 only get 24.5 million when the two conferences are pretty evenly matched when it comes to TV viewership, market sizes, and that type of thing? So that made me wonder, maybe the Big 12 is going to take a huge hit financially. Also, remember when Bob Bowlesby went in front of Congress when it was announced Texas and OU were leaving, and he was basically fighting for the Big 12's life? And he went in front of Congress, and he told Congress that the Big 12 was going to lose half of its revenue when these two schools leave. And he was talking about the impact that would have. So if you take Texas and Oklahoma out, they're making about $40 million right now. You take Texas and Oklahoma out of the equation, that puts us at $20 million a team. Do you really think adding Cincinnati, Houston, UCF, and BYU are going to double the conference revenue alone just in those four schools from 20 to 40 million? I don't believe that. Now, I know there's a higher demand for live sports right now, but it's still not going to get you from 20 million all the way to 40 or 50. Now, it might get you from 20 to 30, which is what new estimates are saying. There was an article by Dennis Dodd a few days ago, which I'll link to in the description box. Dennis Dodd is saying the new estimates that are coming out now are saying that the new Big 12 will likely make just north of 30 million per team per year, which is better than the ESPN offer to the Pac-12, but it's still not. It's still a lot less than they're making now. Can the Big 12 afford to go backwards when the SEC and Big 10 are going to be making around 80 to 100 million a team? Think about that, folks. I mean, we're moving backwards. So I'm sure Brett Yormark has been tasked with finding a way to prevent that from happening. Another thing that has me alarmed and a little bit concerned about the future of the Big 12 is another uh, well-sourced article and also podcast, the Dan Patrick Show. The Dan Patrick Show the other day, he come out and said sources are telling him that NBC is now getting into the mix really hard for the Big 10. You remember the article that came out a few weeks ago saying that NBC was looking at the Big 12 as potential shoulder programming for Notre Dame? Now, apparently, the Big 10 is in that conversation. They're looking really hard to use the Big 10 for that shoulder programming with Notre Dame. So that leaves the Big 12 out of that conversation as well, potentially. Doesn't mean the Big 12 couldn't get a small piece of it, but they're even talking about, according to Dan Patrick, the Big 10 wants to become or could become the NFL of college football conferences. If this deal with obviously their primary deal is going to be with Fox Sports, but if they get this second tier deal done with NBC and they have shoulder programming with Notre Dame, think of that. You could have a Saturday where you could have a Big 10 game, a Notre Dame game, and then another Big 10 game. And oh yeah, by the way, guess what else the NBC is considering? They're considering having shoulder programming with the NFL and the Big 10. You talk about massive. That would be huge for the Big 10. We're hearing numbers now that the Big 10 could be worth up to $1.5 billion a year in TV revenue as a conference. $1.5 billion. Think about that, folks. That is just insane numbers. Guys, this would be number one. Kudos to Kevin Warren in the Big 10 because this would be a massive genius move on their part if they were able to pull this off. It'd be a huge move. And that obviously could send shockwaves through college football and maybe even lead to more realignment. Could be a huge snowball effect. SEC could then start trying to pick off more teams and whatnot. But my point here is, I don't want to get off on that tangent, but my point here is, if the Big 12 gets left out of that negotiation, that's going to, once again, where do they go? You know, ESPN's probably not going to give them more than 30 to 35 million a year per team. Yes, they could get a little bit with Fox here and there. They might be able to do a little bit with CBS. But I just don't see how the Big 12. I don't see how there's any way the Big 12 is going to make more money with the new deal than they are in the current deal, unless Brett Yormark can come up with some very creative ways for this conference to make more money. Whether it's expansion, getting some Pac-12 teams, maybe there's some Group of 5 teams out there that add value. I don't know, but he's got to come up with some way to add value to this league because we're going backwards. Yes, the Pac-12 is going backwards too, but that's not the point of this video. The point of this video is, I think, as Big 12 fans, we have overvalued our conference. I'm really concerned a little bit more now than I was even 2-3 weeks ago because as more information starts to come out, now obviously this is all speculation. We don't know what the TV numbers are going to show, but based on what we're hearing in the media, and let's face it, Dan Patrick's he's very well connected. Look at the years he spent at ESPN. Dennis Dodd is a very highly respected reporter at CBS News or CBS Sports, saying the 30 million plus a year for the Big 12. So the numbers are just not adding up to be good news for the conference. I'll be honest with you. We can paint a rosy picture if we want to, and we can look at the silver lining and say, hey, at least we've survived as a conference. At least it's better to get 30 million a year than to get zero, right? Or to drop back to a Group of 5 league and be getting 10 million a year. But either way, guys, the Big 12 is not keeping pace at all, or even coming close to keeping pace with the Big 10, SEC, and are in danger of even dropping below the ACC in value. Think about that. We could be below the ACC, and heck, who knows? At the end of the day, by the time it all unravels, we could even be below the Pac-12, depending on what kind of deals they can come up with. So it's up to Brett Yormark. It's in his lap now. He has to come out and come up with some creative ways to get revenue for the league. Can he do it? Time will tell. But anyway, I just thought you guys would find this interesting. I'm trying to put all these puzzle pieces together as I get them and bring them to you guys. Let me know in the comment section, what do you think about the Big 12's future? Do you think we're going to take a huge financial hit? Do you think we can come out even with where we are today? What are your thoughts? Or heck, is there a way we can get more revenue? I want to hear your ideas or thoughts. Also, don't forget about my merch store, guys. Link at the top of the description box. Get the design that's on the screen now, and a few others as well. Don't forget about the other links in my description box. Don't forget about the channel memberships that you can take part in by hitting the join button right below this video. Also, if you want to support me for free, the big four: like, share, comment, subscribe. It all helps out my channel. It's all free. It only takes a second to do. In the meantime, I really appreciate you tuning into this video. And until the next one, Q Country Roads.